Welcome to P3, I'm Randall Mark. This is the show that explores the fascinating people, places, and perspectives that make up our world. On today's show, how to get kids to care about the plight of children around the world. We find out about an organization that's doing just that. And later on, do you ever know what scrambling is? It's a cross between hiking and rock climbing. We talked to one of the leading scramblers in BC who wrote a book about some of the top places to scramble. Stick around, it's going to be a great show. Helping other children around the world. That's the dream of Free the Children founder Craig Kilberger. To celebrate the recent opening of the West Coast headquarters in Vancouver, Free the Children hosted West Fest, a night of entertainment and fun. I caught up with one of the ambassadors, co-host of MTV's The After Show and The Hills After Show, Jessi Cruickshank.
Sleeping on the street, refugees with blistered feet, children making fireworks, businessmen with business perks, girls who starve themselves by choice, politicians with a voice.
Jessi, you've been involved with Free the Children. First of all, when did you first get involved with this organization?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. Growing up in Vancouver, and I will never forget this day. One morning, I'm at the breakfast table, eating my Cheerios, doing my thing. And my dad, on the cover of the Vancouver Sun, there's this picture of this cute boy. And I was thinking, is that a pop star I don't know about? What is this cute boy doing? I stole the paper from my dad and realized that this was a 13-year-old boy named Craig Kilberger who had been campaigning against child labor, who had done all these 13. Incredible things at 13.
Right.
And there I am sitting at 13, listening to the Backstreet Boys and not really doing anything productive with my life. And so he was the first person who kind of taught me that even as a teenager, I had the power to change the world. And I got involved with Free the Children as much as I could at 13.
As a teenager?
As a teenager.
So now fast forward, because it's been a number of years.
Fast forward,
MTV,
10 or
right?
so years later. Yeah, MTV and Craig and Free the Children come to me and say, do you want to get involved again? And I was like, I've been involved with you guys for 10 years.
Well, he didn't remember you.
Absolutely,
right?
no.
Right. So you're with MTV, then you get a chance to be an ambassador for them.
Yeah.
Have you been on some trips with them?
I last summer, I had the most unbelievable opportunity. I went to India with Free the Children, and they're just starting up their work there, so I got to see sort of the beginning process of...
So for the outside person, they see this organization, what do they do?
Essentially, their philosophy is to start everything, everything in the developing world begins with education. A lot of the problems with health, overseas just are because of a lack of education. So Free the Children's main goal is to build schools where they don't exist or where they're so dilapidated that they don't work.
So it's freedom through education.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's freedom and empowerment in developing countries through education. So I had the opportunity not only to help build a school, with my own bare hands, but also to see and to meet the communities and the children that are going from having absolutely nothing to all of a sudden going to school every day and being empowered and being able to take that education and change their lives.
Here's my thing. I always look at the TV, I watch people, they're always talking about Africa, the third world.
Yeah.
Why should someone, say, I want to engage the world? Why? Who cares? Why?
Because, at the end of the day, we're all human. I went over there to this foreign land, and I'm this awkward, tall, white, red-headed girl, and I don't think anyone's gonna know why I'm there, and it was very uncomfortable. And all of a sudden these kids start running over to me and holding my hand and pulling me over and teaching me how to dance, and you realize that these are just people who don't have the rights and the freedoms that we do, and if we have the ability to help them get those, then we should do everything we can to do that.
And your experience in India locked you in. You said, I'm committed. This is something that I want to be part of.
I was committed to the idea of it before, but it was only until I went over there and I saw the things firsthand that I realized and saw individual stories, and I realized how this organization is helping individuals change their lives.
Because it's here's the thing. I've said this already, but you get lost in the stats.
Yeah,
you get lost in just there's millions of kids dying.
Yeah.
Do you have names of kids for you that you go, that kid? I have a picture. I have a name. Does that make it real for you then?
Yeah, it helps to go over there and meet people. I mean, Buri was a little girl I met in a village, and I was helping her do the household chores, and she takes me out back, and she starts picking up buffalo poo with her bare hands. Okay. This is just a regular thing that they do because they use the buffalo crap for various things. So she expects me to do that, and I'm picking up this hot, normal, drippy, wet poo in my bare hands. And I mean, it just all, like, you start to realize that she doesn't know that after touching the poo, she shouldn't be eating, and there's that's where,
this education component comes into health and education, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you're saying, I mean, as a Canadian, you have an obligation. You have an obligation as a human who's in a place that's amazing. Vancouver, Canada's amazing, to help people around the world who don't have what you have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have that opportunity, take it, because it's going to enrich your life at the end of the day,
Thanks for chatting today.
Thank
All the best.
you.
I love the organization. It's fantastic.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Philip.
After the break, I talk with author Matt Dunn about a new extreme sport called scrambling. Scrambling is part hiking and part rock climbing. For the avid hiker, it can take you to places filled with challenging adventure and spectacular views. Matt Dunn knows this sport well. He wrote the popular book Scrambles in Southwest British Columbia. And Matt joins me in studio. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you.
You got some fantastic equipment. We're going to understand that. You wrote an amazing book. I mean, I enjoy hiking. I knew 101 best hikes, but I didn't know anything about scrambling. What is scrambling?
Okay, that's a good question, because there's a little bit of gray when it comes to what scrambling really is. I define scrambling as the zone between hiking and mountaineering, and it overlaps a bit on both ends. But I'd say a more typical definition of scrambling is something you can climb, a peak that you can get to the summit of without using ropes.
Okay.
Now, the reason it's a little bit hard to define is because the ability to climb a peak without a rope depends on your experience level and your skill.
What if you're really, really good or you're crazy?
Exactly. So if you're really skilled, you can get up peaks without a rope and call it a scramble that someone who's just, they've done a bit of hiking won't be able to do as a scramble. And I think that's one of the things about scrambling that's really important to let people know about, that it covers this broad range, and it starts from just a hike, a hike that goes to the top of a mountain, but it goes up to stuff that can be quite exposed with a lot of airy cliffs and ridges.
So what is the appeal? I mean, I look in here and it's laid out really beautifully. You've got lots of different options, areas in the Southwest British Columbia you can go to. But what's the appeal of the scramble over, let's say, the mountaineering?
Yeah. Well, for the hiker, the appeal of scrambling is that when you're hiking, you get out and you get to a beautiful place, a nice lake. You get a view of some glaciers. But there is something about getting to the summit of a mountain that's just totally satisfying. And when you're at a lake, at least I feel, and I think a lot of people do, they're like, oh, there's that mountain. I'd love to get up there. And that's scrambling. You get to the lake, the trails led you there, and now you want to go beyond that, get onto the ridge, and follow it up to the top.
So scrambling is that next level.
It's the next step, yeah.
So how did you first get into it? Because, this is quite an undertaking, 300-plus pages of scrambles that you've done. Mm-hmm. How did you first get into it, Matt?
Well, I've been into hiking for a long time, and my parents took me out backpacking, and I think at a certain point, just like I said, I had been doing hiking and I had seen these peaks and had the desire to go further. And actually, there's a book just like this that inspired me to write this book from the Canadian Rockies. I went to school in Calgary, and with a buddy, we discovered this book and started reading about these peaks that we could climb without a lot of technical skills because we didn't have them at that time. And the exploration started from there, and it was really satisfying. I think there's something about getting up to the top that just...
And was there a moment where it was like, I remember where I was, 1990, whatever, and it's like, I'm going to write this book?
Well, the reason I chose to write the book was I had some great experiences in the Rockies, and I moved out to to go to UBC, and I went out on a trip with the Varsity Outdoor Club from UBC and climbed a peak, Brandywine. It's actually on the back of the cover of the book.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fantastic, beautiful area to visit. And I looked around and I'd seen these great books in the Rockies giving information about these, but here there just wasn't a source of information like that. And I started going out on these trips trying to climb peaks, do scrambles. And the road networks here are quite complicated. And I had unsuccessful after unsuccessful trip, bushwhacking after following
Like you're
the road
kind of
for
making
days.
your own trail in some of these
I was
places.
trying to find the way up, and there is
Right.
some information,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really up to date, and it wasn't written for people who didn't have a lot of time.
Okay.
And so I thought, okay, this is actually, there's a market here for a book. People would like this information, and I kind of set off. And the interesting thing was, I had done a hiking book before that, and it had taken only about 3.5 months to write the whole thing and to do all the research. And this book, I thought, maybe it'll take about a year. And I started taking my summers off and going out and doing the scrambling. It actually ended up taking 6 years.
6 years
6
of
years
scrambles.
of scrambles, yeah. And it was far bigger than I thought when I started.
What's the hardest scramble in here, and what's the easiest one?
Okay, there's a classification system. The easiest ones are something like Panorama Ridge
How long is
above
that? How many?
Garibaldi Lake. I think that it would take the full day. Like almost all the scrambles take a day.
But you don't have to spend the night. I mean, this is like you can get up and back in a day.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are some that are overnight, but there's certainly lots that you can do as day trip.
Okay. What's the craziest one in here? The most extreme one that pushes people?
There's a couple. One is Joffrey Peak, and the other is Cirque Peak, and they've got a rating in the rating system I use of very difficult. And they're mountaineering trips. They're at the low end. So if you're a confident mountaineer, you can do it without ropes. But if you're not a mountaineer, it's a place to stay away from.
Now, I mean, some of your images you showed some of the pictures. I mean, these are breathtaking. I mean, the Lower Mainland Vancouver area is unbelievable for these kind of views. What's it like when you're up there? You're above the tree line. Is it just? It must be spectacular.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's one of the things that's great about scrambling over hiking. In hiking, you're often spending a lot of time getting to that alpine lake. The trail goes up through the trees.
Through the trees, you don't see
exactly.
much, yeah.
And then with scrambling, you're spending all that time from the lake up to the summit. And that, to me, is the best part of it. You've got the views, you see the glaciers, you're on the rock. And so in some ways, when you get to the lake and you turn around and go home, I feel like you're missing the very best of it.
Have you taken I'm trying. Let's say there's a viewer who just says, "Listen, I've done some just tiny little hikes. I'm not a big hiker."
Yeah.
Have you taken inexperienced people on some of these scrambles and you can do this?
Yeah.
Or is it like this? You have to be pretty hardcore to take this.
My mom helped me do some of the research on there, actually. I took her up one Blowdown Pass, which is a pretty popular hiking area. And then that one is fairly easy. It's a long drive to get up there, but you drive up to this pass that's in the Alpine, and then from there, it's only about an hour and a half up to the summits. And my mom, I don't know, she was probably over 50, and she
no
went
problem.
up. Yeah, well, she.
You're pushing.
She was working, but
good.
She loved it. Yeah.
But I mean, you're saying, hey, listen, if my mom can do it, lots of people can. This is something that's not just for the person who's the extreme hiker.
Yeah, as long as you can use good judgment.
Right.
And I think that safety issue is a big part of it.
I want to talk about that, Matt. And so I'm going to take a quick break, but I want to talk about the issue of safety. You've got some really interesting equipment here. You have GPS, you have a beacon, and helmet. And so I want to get into what's kind of the equipment that people need if they want to do scrambles, the basic essentials, and then how to be safe on this stuff. So more with Matt right after this. Scrambler Matt Dunn joins me in studio. Matt, you've written this book about scrambles in southwest British Columbia, which is an interesting mix between kind of hiking and mountaineering. And yet, what you've said is that it's almost anyone can attempt these things. They're not kind of extreme. They're something that anyone can get into. Talk to me about some of the safety equipment you have. You've got some interesting stuff here. What does a person need to stay safe?
Great. Those are great questions. The difference between scrambling and hiking is that you do get into some terrain where there's some additional risks, some objective hazards. And one of the biggest issues is that there's a lot of snow out there in the mountains, especially this time of year. By the end, there's less, but at the start of the season, you're going up a lot of snow slopes, and snow can be quite dangerous. It looks fairly benign, but if you take a slip on snow, you can accelerate very quickly and go off a cliff or into rocks. So one of the most important things to have for scrambling, and I take it on any scrambling trip I go on, even if I'm not sure if there's even snow, is an ice axe.
Oh, wow.
So
why would you need this if you're not going to be on snow, though?
Well, because you never know if there's going to be a tiny little patch of snow up at the top of the mountain that you may have to cross. It only takes a small patch of snow to need an ice axe.
You lose your footing.
Exactly.
And then what's the move? I mean, it's a kind of
So
you do with it.
You typically carry an ice axe like this, and
like
you
a
can
walking
use it
cane?
like a walking cane. Yeah. And you can plunge it into the snow as you're walking to give you, if you were to slip, you'd have a hold right away. But if you did fall and start sliding down a peak, you go into something called self-rest mode, and that is where you hold the ice axe like this and get on your stomach, and it slows you down.
You just bam into the...
Yeah, you basically roll into the pick and get it in there.
Very important piece. What else have we got?
Well, a lot of the rock that you end up traveling on can be a bit loose. It's pretty good here in the coast mountains. The rock's fairly solid compared to the Rockies.
There's not a lot of shale.
No, where the Rockies there are, but there's still loose rock, and getting clocked in the head by a rock would be fairly bad.
I don't want that.
So I always take a helmet, and
and you wear that? No.
Yeah, as soon as it starts getting steep enough that I'm worried about rockfall. The other good thing about a helmet is when you're on a bit of tricky terrain, if you were to take a small tumble, say you weren't exposed to massive cliffs, but you were exposed to, maybe you could take a small tumble, this could protect your head and prevent you from a real serious...
Helmet is key.
Yeah, helmets are key. Yeah. And I always take those, no matter how much, how benign I think it may be, I take those.
GPS.
Yeah,
I saw that Garmin there.
Yeah, so the GPS is a great thing to have. One of the reasons that they're really good is that the road network here in the Coast Mountains is very confusing. You use a lot of logging roads to get to
and those aren't detailedly mapped. You don't have a lot of maps of the logging roads.
And they change all the time. They're always going out, and the roads get slumped or destroyed or grown in, or new roads get created. So one of the things I did in my book is when I was doing the research, I made sure to take waypoints at all of the junctions. So that,
brilliant.
Yeah, when you're out there, you get to a junction, is this the junction that I want to take the turn at?
Yes, take a right at this. Perfect.
Yeah, which is really great.
So it's really easy then if you got one of these and you got the book and you can really get to these places.
I think so. I think that's one of the strengths of this book is that I've really tried hard to make it detailed. Yeah. But I have to say that GPSs are great, but they tell you where you are, but without a map to have in conjunction with the GPS, they can be a bit useless.
You've got to get the actual hardcore...
Take the map.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get the map out, you got the rivers, you got the terrain. So you're saying, I don't leave home without a map.
No, the GPS is not good without the map. So
now, what's this orange thing? Because that kind of looks cool.
Yeah, this is a somewhat new product, and I think they're really handy. What it does is, when you're out on a trip, if you were to hurt yourself, say fall and break your leg, and you're with your buddy and you needed help, this thing, which is called the Spot, allows you to send a signal to satellites that gets relayed through to the search and rescue for wherever you are.
It's a beacon. You press boom, boom, and then they immediately know it has a spot.
They know where you are, and so they can come and get you. And so I think
even when my cell phone's not working, that works everywhere on the planet.
Exactly. Yeah. So it could really help you if you were beyond range and you wanted to be able to call a helicopter and get some help.
That's fantastic. That's a really great thing to have.
Yeah.
And obviously the water, and you carry your backpack and great shoes and these kind of things. Let me ask you this, Matt. I mean, I'm looking at some of your pictures. They're stunning photos. What's your experiences like? Have you been, have you seen bears? I mean, what's it like out there?
Yeah, I think characterized by beauty would be the best description of the experiences out there. The alpine terrain is amazing, but yeah, there's wildlife out here. We're in a great part of the world where we still do have bears.
You haven't been chased by a bear and had your leg gnawed off?
No, I have not been chased by bears, but certainly have run into them. And I think one thing that I try and do when I'm out there is, be careful. So I'm always yelling out, hey bear, making lots of noise to try and scare them away all the time.
I love that.
Yeah, I get kind of nervous about bears, and so I've had encounters where I've been maybe not paying enough attention and wandering down through a big berry patch, and all of a sudden startled a bear, and I'm startled, and then I'm.
But you're saying, listen, I've done hundreds of these scrambles, and it's been safe. This is a safe thing to go in the backcountry and do these kind of scrambles. You're not like. It's not like a high-risk thing when it comes to wildlife, these kind of things. This is an opportunity to experience that stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest messages regarding safety for this is that there's the safety equipment that you should take, but beyond that, the biggest safety tool you have is your judgment and your decision-making. And it's easy to get yourself into a bad situation when you're out in the mountains. The mountains are rugged, and they're with a wrong turn or pushing too far, bad weather, any of those things could create a situation where you're in danger. And so what you really need to be able to do is say, hey, this is a situation where I'm going beyond what I'm comfortable with. Climbing down is always harder than climbing up. And you may get to a point where you say, if I go any further, I'm going to be in trouble. And you have to be able to turn around and say, the summit's not that important.
See, that's the thing. I think that's why most people get into trouble.
Yes.
They don't think, I still have to go to that summit and back. And they think, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And they don't actually calculate, getting back.
Yes, yeah. Whether it's time or the increased difficulty of going down, which is a lot harder. So you have to be able to turn around and know what your limit is, and that
Turn back and say, it's not going to happen today. The weather's too bad, whatever it is.
Yes, it's just not worth it. And I've got to say, like, I spent years doing the research for this book, and I turned back from many, many peaks. There were many peaks where I just was, okay, this is too scary for me, or the weather's bad, or the conditions aren't right, or I don't feel confident, and I would turn around and go back, and those peaks aren't in the book, and you know that.
You're like, that's not the one I'm going to put in the book.
Yeah, and everybody has to have that limit for themselves, because every peak in this book is not suitable for every person that's going
true.
out.
People got to figure that out.
Yeah.
I've got a minute left, Matt. Let me ask you this. People are watching. They're saying, hey, how do I get into scrambling? I mean, there's a lot of equipment, but what would you motivate them with? How do you say, get off the couch, go out there and explore some of these peaks?
Yeah, you know, I think the best thing there is that it is a fun activity, but it's also a fun social activity. Most of my friends are people that I've done outdoor trips with, and so I think it's really great to get hooked in with people that have experience. That's the best way to learn, and that are going out and doing these trips, and then it makes the trip fun, and you get excited about that kind of social interaction. They're good experiences, and so clubs are a great way to get involved.
That's great. You can meet new people.
Totally.
And you know, there's nothing better than having this shared experience where you're like, remember that thing we did last weekend? The five of us, we saw this thing. It's a real way to connect and experience the outdoors. And again, we live in one of the best places of the world for this. I mean, you couldn't ask for, better places than Southwest British Columbia. Matt, thanks a lot for coming on the show. It was really interesting.
No problem.
All the best.
Pleasure.
Stay tuned. More of P3 right after the break. Welcome back. If you have a question or comment and want to share it with us, drop us an email at info@p3tv.ca. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Randall Mark.